at Radio Row because, the 49ers obviously lost the NFC Championship game. Everybody knows that. And a bunch of Niners rolled into Arizona. It's close. And made several appearances on Radio Row. And George Kittle was there. You saw Brandon Ayuk on with Brad Graham. Deebo made the rounds. Robbie Gould did some media. And all these guys were asked the question. And the question was, who's going to win the Super Bowl? And give me your honest opinions. And I love it. I love it because you know what? The feeling in the Niner room all season long was Super Bowl or bust. And nobody actually said the season is a bust if we don't win the Super Bowl, but that was their standard. That's what they were about. They were about going to the Super Bowl. So, and they had tremendous confidence that week going into the game with Philly. The atmosphere was light. It was loose. It was confident. They didn't have like a swagger or cockiness about them, but they were very confident that they were the better team and that they would go into Philadelphia and do what they've done many times in the past, and that's win a playoff game on the road. And then, of course, Purdy gets knocked out. Josh Johnson comes in. Eventually, he gets knocked out. We all know the story. Niners get blown out in the game, and the Eagles go on to the Super Bowl. But then the 49er players went to Arizona, and they did interviews. And to me, I was thinking to myself, you know what? These guys are going to come out and they're going to, and I was wondering about it. I'm like, I know there can be some Niners in Arizona. They're going to be asked questions. And I bet you anything, they're going to basically say exactly the kinds of things that they were telling me the week before, which is we believe in ourselves. We think we're better than Philly. We think we're going to beat Philly. And I don't think anything that happened in that game at the link between the Niners and the Eagles changed the Niners' thinking. So when Robbie Gould was asked about it, and he gave his honest opinion, and so did Deebo, and so did Ayuk, and then all of a sudden everybody's like calling it sour grapes, and the Niners have sour grapes. And I thought, you know what? We rip these athletes coast to coast when we ask them questions, and they give us pat answers and the PC. Well, you know what? The filtered PC answer. Instead, the 49ers answered those questions honestly, the way they actually felt, and people still crushed them for it. So I'm glad that they were somewhat vindicated because I think there was people talking. The media is so Northeast centric, and the Eagles are right there in the midst of it, that the national media was way, way too in love with the Eagles, and they didn't pay attention to really the key factors, which was Eagles had played the worst schedule of any team in pro football, 32nd ranked schedule. They then took on a Giants team that probably didn't even belong in the playoffs. And then they get the Niners with their 4th-string quarterback. They were completely and wholly untested going into that Super Bowl. And I'm not surprised at all that Kansas City won. But I'm really happy that the 49er players who were called, whiners and sour grapes were kind of shown to be right.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And again, like Deebo kind of at the forefront, he says, what do you want us to say? That we're going to win, that they were going to win anyways? No, they felt in their hearts that if Purdy was not injured, they had the chance to win that game. And they all said it, they asked them a legit question. How do you attack the both teams? Because they played both teams, and Robbie was asked, Kittle was asked, Deebo was asked. They're going to ask the questions. So where we want to sit here and not answer the questions, no, they're going to give you their honest truth. And they all said, okay, the D-line is their strength. They had 70 sacks. If you can stand up and attack the secondary and the back end, that's how you beat them. And that's all they said. But people took it as, oh, you guys are sore losers. Right. They're being asked these questions. So if you don't want the answers, don't ask the questions. And these media guys wanted the juicy questions. They were waiting for the headlines because what did they post all week? It was, the Niners are saying, oh my God. So they were doing it for a reaction, and the Niners are going to be honest. They're unfiltered. I love it because they didn't give the generic answer, and they gave their honest opinions. And I love that they stood by it, and they were proven right. And through the season, everybody said, the Chiefs have a great quarterback. This is the guy, Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like he kind of was under the radar, which we talked about last week. I said, you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, whereas everybody was saying, oh, the Eagles, they're so good, they're dominant. But were they dominant? They played a very easy schedule. And you're right, Danny Dimes, no disrespect to him. He had a better year, a resurgent year. They played the Niners without a quarterback, to be honest. And when they did play big time quarterbacks, they got gashed. They played Dak Prescott, and they put up 40 points on him. The Saints put up a lot of points and walked all over him a couple of weeks ago. So
Aaron Rodgers, they had to go to
Aaron
OT to beat
Rodgers.
them.
Exactly. So was that defense the greatest? They said they were, but they let up a lot of points. And not to take away from that game because, Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, they put up a performance. Jalen Hurts had to play like an MVP last night, and it wasn't enough. He had the big fumble play that happened last night. Everybody's talking about this holding penalty last night, but they're not talking about how the Eagles gave up 3 touchdowns. Mahomes was gashing them, and that's exactly what the 49ers said. Hey, if you attack them in the air, they will be exposed. And they kept it 100, and I'm so happy that the 49ers didn't tuck their tails in. They said what they said. And you know what? It was the Eagles and Chiefs media week, but who was the talk of the town? The San Francisco 49ers took over media week. And one thing that Deebo tweeted last night, I was so happy. He says, listen, he says that the Eagles had no reason worrying about what we were saying in the media. He says they wanted to tweet about us. They should have been focused on the game. So they played 40 chess with the Eagles. At the end of the day, they got in their mind. They lived rent-free inside the Eagles' head. And at the end of the day, Niner players were vindicated. They didn't say anything wrong.
Oh, I know. It was, and the Niners handled it beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you're better, tell them that you think you're better. Don't give some polite PC answer. Tell them the truth. And Kittle did, Deebo did, Ayuk did, Robbie Gould did, and everybody ripped them for it. And it was a beautiful Super Bowl Sunday